Hello, everyone. All right, I'm Dr. Nikki Davis with Lifestyle Telemedicine, and I have the amazing Dr. Jeff Pierce with me today as well. We will be hosting today's show, and we are going to be talking all about raw food nutrition. And we have a couple of amazing guests with us today. We have both Dr. Rick Dina and Dr. Karin Dina, and yes, they are related
Hey, everyone.
Yeah.
by marriage. All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here today. And thanks, Jeff, for being here with me today as well.
My
All
pleasure.
right.
Thank you
Get
for having
back with
us.
everybody.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to start out by just having people tell us where they're watching from. Let's see if we can pop that up there. So for those of you who are watching live, we would love to see where you are all hailing from. And I do believe that 3 of the 4 of us are maybe in a similar location. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We 3/4 of us are living in a cool town called Santa Rosa, Northern California. Nikki was here briefly, and sometimes thinks about moving to Santa Rosa when it's -5 in Utah.
I would love it. Well, we'll get to this because I know that Dr. Rick, you had done some work over at True North Health Center in Santa Rosa. And
Yes.
I also did, well, I did a 1-month internship there when I was in my residency program.
Great.
And while I was there, being there for an entire month, I got to know the neighborhood pretty well. I was going on like nice long walks around the neighborhood, walking downtown, and I fell in love with the area. Absolutely.
It's good. It's really nice. We're happy to be here.
And it looks like we've got somebody watching actually from Santa Rosa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look at that. There's 4 of us then.
That's incredible. All right. Well, before we get going on kind of just learning more about you, I'm going to give people just a little bit of a background on the both of you so that they kind of know who you guys are if they're not familiar with your work. First of all, we have Dr. Rick Dina. He became interested in nutrition in 1986, has been studying and practicing raw plant-based nutrition since 1987. He worked at Hippocrates Health Institute and for the Juiceman before entering Life Chiropractic College in 1993. And then after graduating in 97, he practiced at True North Health Center from 97 until 2001. And he was able to help patients recover from high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, on autoimmune diseases, and then other nutritionally related health challenges with not only fasting, but with whole food plant-based nutrition. And then after teaching at Bastyr University, Rick maintained a private chiropractic and nutrition practice from 03 to 08 in San Rafael, California, with his wife, Dr. Karin Dina. And Dr. Karin Dina with us today as well is an author, researcher, educator, clinician, and health enthusiast. She studied naturopathic medicine at Bastyr University, graduated from Palmer College of Chiropractic West, and has honors education in biology. She and her husband, Dr. Rick Dina, are creators and instructors of the Science of Raw Food Nutrition series of classes that they taught at a well-known raw food culinary school in Northern California for 10 years. She enjoys teaching people about the science behind the benefits of whole natural plant foods and is the author of the Raw Food Nutrition Handbook, an essential guide to understanding raw food diets. She has been a featured speaker at and culinary presenter at numerous events such as the Raw Health Expo, the Pure Living Expo, the Raw Living Expo, the UK Fruitfest, and the Woodstock Fruit Festival. And she's also been interested in nutrition since 88, and has been studying and practicing raw food nutrition since 1990. And in addition to presenting and writing, Karin enjoys gardening, exercising, and reading peer-reviewed research. So we are talking about raw food nutrition today, guys, and we have the experts with us today. So if you have questions about raw food nutrition, you are in the right place today. So I am just so thrilled to welcome you both here and really excited to learn more about the both of you and what you do. So, all right, I'm just going to put in a few more of these comments. So we've got people from watching from all over the place. So this is exciting, not only in warm spots, but maybe in more snowy and cold spots.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure for us to be here. Oh, someone else from Santa Rosa. Wow.
Oh,
Oh,
awesome.
wow, look at that.
In-person get together after this or something.
Absolutely. Go meet over at True North for a meal. All right. Well, why don't we start out by, boy, I think the thing that really grabs me is how long you guys have been in this realm. You both got interested in this way of eating in the 1980s, which long before not only raw food was popular, but I would say plant-based nutrition in general. So, what first was it that made you both question, the way that most people eat, and how did you get into this initially?
Yeah. Should I start or do you
Yeah,
want
you
to,
can
Karen?
start and then I'll go after
All
you.
right. It was a couple of years earlier, so we'll go in chronological order here. So, um, let's see, where do I start? So, going back to my freshman year in college, I was not feeling my best. I was missing most of my morning classes. I was run down. I was sluggish. I knew I had about 30 pounds of a beer belly to get rid of. And my younger brother was involved. He had started recently getting involved in sports nutrition. His high school track coach got him into it. And then he kind of took it beyond that. And so I asked him if I could, read a couple books, and the books were talking about eating less fat and more complex carbohydrates, and it was cleaner burning, and all that made sense to me. So I started doing some of that, and then the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year in college, I naturally dropped about 15 pounds and started feeling a lot better, and thought, wow, maybe there's further to go. That this is really fantastic. So from there, found out about the work of Nathan Pritikin, which was just really great stuff. Shortly after that, found this book, kind of radical at the time, called The McDougall Plan. That came out in 1985, so read that in 1986 or 7. And then there was a follow-up book to that, Dr. McDougall's Challenging Second Option for Various Disease Processes. In other words, instead of the conventional treatment, what could you do nutritionally? And all of this made so much sense. And I started implementing it and just started feeling so good. Shortly thereafter, read a book called Fit for Life that talked about food combining and people eating fruits and vegetables. That made a lot of sense to me. Wrote away to some of the places it said in the back of that book. Found out about even crazier stuff like fasting and eating mostly fruits and vegetables. And when I was 20 years old, living in my college dorm, we talked about it being cold in the winter. It was in the winter in Connecticut, snow on the ground, all that stuff. I did a 14-day water fast, and everyone thought I was berserk. I had people knocking on the door. Hey, man, I heard you're on a hunger strike. What are you protesting? And the resident assistant of the dorm made me check in with her every day because, they thought I was going to die. And, it was crazy. So, the great thing about that, in addition to other benefits, is that I developed childhood allergies, hay fever type allergies, when I was about 8 years old. And from 8 years old until the beginning of that fast, I was getting allergy injections regularly. They didn't really help. My arm would swell up. I'd feel exhausted all afternoon. In the spring, I would have runny, itchy eyes and a drippy nose. I'd blow my nose, 100 times a day and sneeze a few hundred times. After that water fast, 95% of my allergy symptoms were gone. It was just extraordinary. And I just thought, my God, this is just the best way to live. Most people out there don't get it, but been hooked ever since. It was just so effective. And I was so impressed that an individual could have so much control over their health and well-being that I just that was it. And so 40 years almost later, still on the path. And at this point, Dr. Karin and I have developed a curriculum, whole food, plant-based, peer-reviewed based, but we emphasize fruits and vegetables. And we teach that online, and we have some other programs, and we're just honored that we can have the opportunity to make a living sharing what we love. And it's so amazing today. We never would have thought back then in the 1980s that plant-based nutrition would be what it is today. Never would have thought. I mean, people never, they'd be like back in those days. So you're a vegan, is that it? I mean, and now everyone knows what a vegan is. True North is getting on the map with fasting, publishing stuff in the peer-reviewed literature. There are huge conferences where 1,500 MDs and nurses go to get their continuing education in plant-based nutrition, and they hear from Dr. Clapper and Furman and Goldhammer, and you folks probably are there. And it's just incredible. So we're just so happy to be part of the movement and helping out how we can.
Well, it's fun to hear your perspective with being so early on in this, I would say, movement, this plant-based movement, that you get to see what it used to be and what it is today. Because I think a lot of people can get frustrated that we haven't gone farther than we have. But when you compare it to where we were in the 80s, it's definitely changed a lot. So Dr. Karin, would you mind telling us a little bit about your story, similarly, how you kind of found this and what intrigued you to this way of living?
Sure, absolutely. And just to kind of reiterate something that Dr. Rick just said, that there just hasn't been, actually, let me back up. Just to kind of reiterate what Dr. Rick was saying, that back then people didn't really know what a vegan was. We didn't have the term plant-based back then. That's like a relatively new term. And back then, eating a vegetarian or a vegan diet was a bit of a departure, but then raw food was even that much more of a departure. So for some reason, people could be more accepting of a plant or a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, but raw food was just completely out of people's universe. So it was kind of interesting for me in my experience when I first got started, because I became interested in this way of eating when I was feeling quite a bit of fatigue. And this was back when I was in college, early college years. And I went to 3 medical practitioners, 3 medical doctors, and had about $5,000 worth of tests done. And they all came back perfectly fine. So they didn't have an answer for me at that time. So I was kind of left to my own devices. And so I started to do some research. Fortunately, a friend of mine had become recently interested in vegetarian and vegan eating, and he handed me a book. He gave it to me for Christmas. And that book was called Diet for a New America, which is really kind of one of the foundational books that I would, at least when I think of the plant-based approach, this is one of those foundational books. It's by John Robbins. People don't really talk about it very much, but it was so big and so popular back then because it really helped to draw connections between health and the environment and how we treat animals. And it was just such a brilliant piece of work. So that made me interested in plant-based eating. And then after eating this way for about a month, I started to feel better. I went from sleeping about 12 hours per night to about 8 hours per night. But then an interesting chance meeting that my sister had with somebody got me interested in raw food. And raw food was a huge, huge difference. Yeah, I felt like the best that I ever had in my entire life. I went from sleeping 8 hours per night to more like 6, and I felt just extraordinary. It was amazing. So should we tell them the experience that we had early on with that, Dr. Rick?
Yeah, sure. That's kind of fun seeing we're a married couple here. And this was about 10 years before we got together as a couple. So I'll say from my point of view, my younger brother and I were in the health food store, and some young woman comes in who he knew from high school, but I had when I graduated from high school, she became a freshman. So I didn't know her at all. And he starts asking her these questions, and he was like really into it, like really, really into it. So he asked her, hey, I know you from track, how are you doing? Hey, are you a vegetarian? In other words, like, what are you doing here in a health food store? She's like, yes, I am. Well, are you vegan? She says, yes, I'm vegan. Well, are you raw? Raw? No, what's that? So we both told her all about it. She bought some books, went home, and Karin, I'll let you pick up from there.
Yeah, this woman was my sister, actually. So she had these books, and she gave me what she bought at the health food store, which is a bunch of cooked vegan food. And she said, "Here, you can have this." But then she handed me a stack of books, and they were all kind of the classics
Well,
of raw
she
food
said
nutrition.
you can have this food. I'm never eating anything cooked
Oh,
again.
yes, of course. I'll never eat anything
We
ever
gave it
again.
to her, you know.
Yeah, so she was convinced after that. Interestingly enough, though, that only lasts a couple of months for her. But for me, it's lasted 35 years. I don't know. I guess I'm more of a tortoise, you know. She's more of a hare, I was more of a tortoise. But anyway, she handed me these books, and they were all the classics of raw food and natural hygiene, and sort of the Hippocrates approach and Wigmore approach. And I actually read those books, and I thought they were absolutely fascinating. And I started to employ a lot of the information that I learned in those books. And within a short period of time, I felt the best that I ever had in my entire life. And it was just an absolute revelation. And I thought, oh my goodness, everybody should know that it's possible to feel this way. And so that was a huge shift just in my entire consciousness. I decided that I wanted to learn so much more about this and really find a scientific basis for it, because there was a lot of talk about the philosophy around raw food back then. There wasn't much substantive information. I really, really wanted to find out the reason why my fatigue disappeared and why I felt so good. I couldn't seem to find an answer, so that was the beginning of my journey. And I went back to school, got a degree in biology, went on for further education in naturopathic medicine and chiropractic and nutrition. And this became my career. And we came up with our curriculums, Science of Raw Food Nutrition and Mastering Raw Food Nutrition. And the rest is history.
Amazing. So how did the two of you then finally get together?
Yeah, so good question. So we were friends for about 10 years. And we kept in touch. Let's see, I moved down to Florida to actually work at Hippocrates Health Institute. Karin went off to Colorado to get her second undergrad degree in biology. There was one time when I was visiting her. I was in chiropractic school near Atlanta at this time, and I went to visit her in Colorado, which my ex, who I was living with at the time, suggested that, hey, you should go to Colorado because there's this cool chiropractic seminar that she had done that I hadn't done, and it's in Denver, and you could stay with your friend Karin because they had met. And on that visit, I don't know, some sparks started to fly a little bit. We're just like, I'm like, man, she's pretty cool. And so that kind of started the sparks. And then it was a few years later that we actually got together. And actually, she's responsible for stealing me away from True North. I had been at True North for 4 years, and she was at Bastyr in Seattle, and I was at True North, close to Santa Rosa at the time. It was in Pengrove. They had an outpatient office in Rohnert Park. And we had been having a long distance relationship for about a year. And it was to the point where, you know, the long distance thing was getting difficult. Karin used to say, oh, I should drop out of school and move here. And she did her summer preceptorship at True North from naturopathic medical school. So that was kind of nice. We got to hang out then. So anyway, I left and moved up there. And we've been together ever since. Still glad to be close to True North, and it's fun. We go by there from time to time, once or twice a year. We have a fasting section in our curriculum, and oftentimes our students get inspired and then go fast at True North. And then usually in one of the last couple days in the refeeding phase, when they're feeling up for it and can take a walk and stuff, we'll go visit. So we're happy to still be nearby.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, that's a bit about how we met and got together, and why we do what we do.
Great. Well, seems like a very good pairing. It seems like it was kind of meant to be. So, well, I would love to get into kind of the, nutritional aspects of raw food. So I think that you would think that it seems very obvious. What does raw food nutrition mean? Like, what is the definition of it? It's food that is not cooked. But I think that there's more to it than that. I would love to hear from the two of you, if you could define raw food nutrition, what is it exactly? And then let's talk a little bit about why. Why does it make sense for people to either eat completely raw or at least incorporate a lot of raw foods into their diet?
Sure. I kind of see nutrition broken down into its three simplest components. Number one is you have to supply your body with the nutrients it needs. I mean, nutrients matter. We all need protein and calcium and vitamin C and carotenoids and other antioxidants and all those things. We need to take away things that are harming us. So the typical diet is full of saturated fat and cholesterol and dietary carcinogens from animal products cooked at high temperatures and all those things. And then number three, we need to free up our body's digestive energy. And that might not sound like a big deal, but if we look at something like water fasting, that's what's going on there. Your body doesn't have to do any work digesting and metabolizing food. And the body's pretty amazing at healing itself. So with that leftover energy, and this is, you can't define it. There isn't a machine that can measure it. You don't see it in peer-reviewed literature. And that's why sometimes this gets into the strange realm. But nevertheless, if you look at something like water fasting is the extreme example of what happens when you free your body from digesting food, people consistently and predictably reverse type 2 diabetes, reverse autoimmune disease, lower their blood pressure, are able to responsibly wean off of various medications and then not have those side effects, lose 100 pounds when they keep up with a healthy follow-up diet and keep it off over time. So pretty amazing things happen. The great news is it doesn't happen. It's not binary. It's not like when our fasting patients would take their first sip of juice when they're breaking their fast. It's not like, oh, now you're not fasting anymore. All the benefits of freeing up digestive energy have now turned off. I would usually tell fasting patients, okay, you're fasting, you're driving on the highway 70 miles an hour. Now that you're in the juicing phase, you've taken your foot off the accelerator, but you're still going really fast. In other words, all the benefits are still there. So with raw fruits and vegetables, like with whole grains and beans, and other whole natural plant foods, you have eliminated cholesterol. You've eliminated a lot of dietary carcinogens. You have provided your body with a lot more fiber, a lot more nutrients. All those same things are in place. And again, hard to define here, but it seems like in most people's experience, it's easier to digest, let's say, a meal worth of ripe bananas versus a meal worth of rice and potatoes. Most people share with us that when they eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, they feel lighter, they feel better. Karen's example is kind of extreme, but nevertheless very real and relevant for her. So the benefits, really the benefits of raw food are compared to, say, more starches, is that it's easier to digest. So if you have hard to digest food like most people eat, and then fasting at the other end of the spectrum, you go from here to here maybe in terms of less digestive energy, freeing up some of your body's resources and ability to heal and repair itself. And there are some nutrients that are lost depending on the food and depending on the cooking method that you don't need to lose when you eat your food in the raw state. So basically, and then there's a bunch of various what they call cooked food toxins out there. Easy to pronounce things like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and heterocyclic amines and a dietary advanced glycation end products and acrylamide. Most of those are left behind when you go to a plant-based diet. The one that's left over is known as acrylamide, and it is created when we cook food that contains carbohydrates at temperatures above 120 Celsius or 248 degrees Fahrenheit. So you leave that behind when you don't cook, and you gain some nutrients and you free up your body's resources. And Dr. Karin, do you want to discuss a little bit about nutrient loss from cooking?
Yeah, sure. But first, I'd like to quickly just define what you can expect to eat when you're eating a raw food diet. A diet tends to focus on, depending on your approach, fruits, vegetables, leafy greens. Oftentimes people will lump leafy greens in with vegetables, and sometimes people separate them out. So I'll mention both. Nuts, seeds, sprouts, and it's basically it. There are some things that you really can't eat raw, like, for example, certain sprouted beans. You obviously want to stay away from those. And I would say that those are kind of the main things that people like to eat. But probably one of the most compelling reasons to eat fruits and vegetables in their raw state would be the loss of certain nutrients. Probably the biggest one is vitamin C. Water-soluble vitamins tend to be the ones that are the most easily lost. So if we look at those, vitamin C is probably the most, followed by folate and some of the other B complex nutrients as well. And then certain antioxidants that tend to be susceptible to damage by heat. And phytonutrients as well. Probably the antioxidants that are the most susceptible to damage by heat would include things like anthocyanins, some of the flavonoids, glucosinolates in cruciferous vegetables, because, for example, if we don't cook cruciferous vegetables, when we chew them, we tend to have the formation of isothiocyanates, one of which is sulforaphane that everybody knows about. Cooking will inactivate the enzyme myrosinase that transforms the glucosinolates into isothiocyanates. So we kind of miss out on that strong antioxidant if we're overcooking our cruciferous vegetables. So those are kind of the big ones. And let me see.
And could I also add? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. We also get some mineral loss. But the good news is that minerals do not individually break down with heat. They're not, you don't heat them high enough for them to actually break down, with maybe the exception of iodine. Sometimes that, if we cook that at a high enough temperature, we can get that being altered by cooking, but all the other ones, we don't have that. But we do have mineral loss if we boil, because then the minerals will be leached out into the cook water. So those are probably the big ones that I can think of. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I just wanted to say, in terms of a raw food diet, kind of like, just because someone says I'm vegan or vegetarian, you don't really know what they eat. Are they eating all the processed food, or are they eating, fruits and vegetables and some brown rice and some simple things? Same within the raw food community. Some raw foodists focus on nuts and seeds and oil and salt and things out of the dehydrator and all these gourmet desserts, and other raw foodists focus on fruits and vegetables. No matter what somebody eats or how they define it, we emphasize fruits and vegetables as a staple in their diets, because they're super nutrient dense, they're low in calorie density, and they're easy to digest. And they don't have things that you don't want in your diet. So anyway, we tend to be toward the fruit and vegetable eating end of the raw food spectrum, not the nut and seed and, make you too dense end of the spectrum.
Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to add is that most of our students, interestingly enough, are not 100% raw. Some of them are, but not all of them are. And not all of them necessarily want to be 100% raw. They just want to get the best results that they want. And they don't necessarily feel like they have to do it 100%. Sometimes we get to the point of diminishing returns if we're going in the direction of 100% raw. What is going to be the most sustainable for somebody over the long term? Is that 100%? Or is that some amount of cooked food? So then we have to ask ourselves, what is going to give somebody the best health results over the long term, where we can avoid some of those cooked food toxins that Dr. Rick just mentioned, while still enjoying some of the foods that we like to have. Like, for example, the water cooking methods, we tend to see the least amount of nutrient loss with those, and we don't see the formation of cooked food toxins because we don't surpass that 248 degree Fahrenheit, 120 Celsius threshold for the formation of cooked food toxins, which would be acrylamide. All the other ones form at a much higher temperature. So things like steaming and boiling to some degree. But if we want to talk about nutrient preservation, the best cooking method for that would definitely be steaming, because you're going to lose a lot less of the more susceptible nutrients like vitamin C with steaming. You'll still lose some, but you're not going to lose nearly as much with the more intense cooking methods.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's really good to know. Yeah.
That's kind of it in a nutshell. So easier to digest, more nutrients, and leaves the bad stuff behind, like other plant foods do. And for some people, like Karin, it makes the difference between feeling a bit better with plant-based versus, wow, now I really feel good with raw. And a lot of people tell us that over time. They just feel lighter and better and happier and more clear, and their brain works better, and they recover faster from their workouts and all those types of things. So we figure, hey, why not? Why not, get a lot of the good stuff in there? And just another quick comment, why we really specify that we're not into the nuts and seeds and dehydrated foods. We have small amounts of those things, and they can help add some calorie density. So you don't have to eat 12 pounds of fruits and vegetables just to get enough calories. That can be challenging. I know even with starches, Dr. McDougall was always telling his people, eat more food, eat more food, eat more food. You got 400 or 500 calories per pound instead of 1,200. You need to eat enough, and you don't want to be eating 800 calories a day and then saying, oh, I don't feel good. So anyway, we have some of those dense things. But for example, we would way rather have somebody, generally speaking, eat steamed vegetables instead of some raw gourmet dessert made out of dates and nuts and, oil or salt like some people put in. So anyway, just wanted to kind of get that aspect in there, that it's not, there's various ways to define one's diet, and we try to strip the labels out and just say, let's eat the healthiest food possible, and make a lot of that fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And
so Rick, should we talk a little bit about the beta carotene controversy?
Possibly. That always comes up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about this.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start with this. There's a lot of talk in the plant-based community about the importance of cooking for making beta carotene more absorbable. And there is some truth to that. In general, what we see in the scientific literature is that beta carotene is a little bit more absorbable if you cook the food that it is in. There is some truth to that. And I can understand why a lot of the plant-based doctors suggest that we cook for beta carotene. Because if somebody is not eating a lot of vegetables, for example, or fruits, things that tend to be higher in beta carotene, it might be important for them to actually cook so they could get more of it. But we can't necessarily make the jump to saying that raw foodists are going to be low in beta carotene. And the reason why is because I've actually had a number of tests done on my blood beta carotene levels, and consistently, it's been quite high. And I actually have one of my lab reports here. I know it's a little bit hard to show you, but maybe I can. This one was done back in 2016, I think. Yeah.
You've had it done twice. I've measured mine like 10 times.
Yeah, this might be hard to see, but I'll just read it to you. My beta carotene level.
Well, should we say the reference range first?
Yes, the reference range is
3 to
91,
and that's with
micrograms per deciliter. And this is LabCorp. And my beta carotene was 370. So they said it was off the charts. Where is it? Right there.
Yeah,
Here it is.
and then verified by repeat testing. You know, when you
Verified
get
by
an
repeat
outlier
testing.
result there, they want to make sure they got it right.
Yeah, is that backwards? It looks backwards. But yeah, it's
It looks-
370. And so what this comes down to is that even if you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables in the raw state, if you're eating enough of them, there's a very good chance you're going to absorb quite a bit of that beta carotene. So when you hear somebody say that you absolutely have to cook for beta carotene, we need to actually look at the individual person and see how much of the fruits and vegetables that they're eating actually is. And it would be helpful for people to get their beta carotene tested. Fortunately, you can do that at LabCorp and some of the other, Quest, the other big laboratory testing.
Yeah, and we've measured Karin's beta carotene one other time, and it was in the lower 300s, not quite as dramatic, but still well above the high end of the reference range. And I've measured my beta carotene on many occasions, and typically without any carrots in my diet, although I do tend to eat a head of lettuce each day, and that's actually really high in beta carotene, which is great. But without any carrots in my diet, I tend to be in the upper double digits, like 85, 90, 95, like near the higher end of the range to the lower hundreds. And then when I make the effort to put a few carrots per week in my diet, like in a salad dressing or something like that, then I get into the low 200s for beta carotene and you know, without cooking. So it's interesting. We've done some dietary analyses of like a starch-based diet, and then we do a makeover to it and take some starches away and add some vegetables in their place and some fruit. And you'll oftentimes see like 10 or 20 times more beta carotene in the more vegetable-rich diet as opposed to the more starch-rich diet, unless, of course, you've had sweet potatoes as your starches. And so even if you might absorb a little bit less of that, you know, when you have 20 times more of something and you absorb, you know, 20% less, you're still going to come out way, way ahead. And interestingly, we've looked into some of the research about beta carotene and other carotenoid absorbability. And they've done some studies where they give people a beta carotene supplement and then they check their serum levels, follow it for a while and see how it goes up. Then they give people the same beta carotene supplement and a fiber supplement. And what happens is the beta carotene levels in the serum don't go up nearly as much because fiber actually blocks some of the beta carotene and other carotenoid absorption. So just if you looked at that, you would think, well, fiber isn't good. You know, we shouldn't have it in the diet. But when you look at the whole picture of it lowering cholesterol, helping to regulate blood sugar, feeding healthy probiotic bacteria so you have a healthier microbiome, and then the blood sugar and the anti-inflammatory effects of that, and on and on and on, fibers are a really good thing to have. So when you eat a more raw diet, the foods tend to be like vegetables are higher in fiber per calorie than starches, generally speaking. So some of what you see with the, you know, you might see like 60% beta carotene absorption when you cook your food and soften up the fiber versus when you don't, and the fiber is a bit more intact and not as soft, and it holds on to some of those nutrients a bit more, you might get like 40%. But again, if you're tripling, quadrupling 10 or 20 times your amount of beta carotene, you're still going to get an awful lot of it. And it's fun for us to have measured this and to see for ourselves. And I wonder how many people, maybe the next time we interview Dr. Greger, we should ask him, because he's a big, you got to cook for beta carotene. We love Dr. Greger in general, but just like with Karin and I, we don't agree on everything. So there's always some fun points to debate and nerd out over the research about and that type of thing. But maybe we should ask him if he's ever measured his beta carotene level.
That
I've
would
never
be very
heard any of the
interesting.
starch-based doctors who, kind of put down raw,
Yeah.
look at their levels or measure it, but we have, and we think we're doing great in that area.
Yeah. And, there's this one thing that I'd like to add to this, because Sometimes people look at my 370 micrograms per deciliter beta carotene and they think, well, geez, is that going to make you toxic on vitamin A? Because it's known that beta carotene and some of the other carotenoids are able to be converted into vitamin A. But the good news is most people's bodies, I should say, have a natural check on the ability to convert the carotenoids into vitamin A. And I actually had my vitamin A tested around the same time that I had my beta carotene tested, and I'm right in the middle of the reference range. So LabCorp's vitamin A reference range is 20.1 to 60.2 micrograms per deciliter, and my serum vitamin A is 39.6. So it's like right in the middle of the reference range.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll say for me, my beta carotene levels have varied quite a bit. Sometimes I've tested, gotten some lab work done, let's say at the end of a juice fast, where I had some green vegetable juices, but a lot of fruit juices, and I'm kind of in the mid-range of the reference range between 3 and 91, maybe like 40 or 50 or so, which is probably still really solid. But for me, that's like, oh, wow, that's so low. And, other times it gets up into the 200s. And measuring beta carotene and vitamin A are a bit more expensive. It's not just like a CBC for $20. And, so I don't measure vitamin A every time I measure my beta carotene, but I've probably measured that 4 or 5 times out of 10 or 12 that I've also measured beta carotene. And each time, whether beta carotene is really low or really high, vitamin A tends to be right about in the middle of the reference range, meaning our body's smart. When it needs more vitamin A, it takes those carotenoid precursors and it makes enough. And if it doesn't need as much, it leaves the beta carotene, under the skin, turns your palms orange and stuff, and lets it be, and is not going to create too much of something that isn't good for it.
Yeah. And this also brings up another point with vitamin A, because a lot of people in the plant-based community, or at least I've been asked this question quite a bit, that they're very concerned about making sure that they get enough vitamin A and that they're actually going to be able to convert beta carotene and alpha carotene and the other carotenoids that are capable of being converted into actually vitamin A. And fortunately, you can get a test for that to know if you're somebody that has trouble with that. But it's very rare to see somebody who can't make that conversion. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I wanted to open it up for anybody who's watching live. If anybody has any questions about raw food in general or anything that's come up that you have a question about. While we're waiting to see if we have any questions from people watching, Dr. Pierce, I think I saw that you maybe had a comment or a question for them.
I'm not sure what it was now at this point, but I did want to comment most recently on how, yes, I agree with you, how the body is so good at being able to take these whole foods, pull from them what we need, and not use the other components that we don't need, particularly from the plant-based foods. And, similar to beta carotene, where that study a long time ago that was giving people beta carotene to see if it could help prevent lung cancer, and these are beta carotene supplements, and then over the long run, it seems increasing risk for lung cancer when you were giving just pure beta carotene. And so get your nutrition from the whole foods as much as possible. And it sounds like even if you're eating raw foods, that you're going to be getting plenty of beta carotene. And if you're in doubt, test, don't guess, and you could check that beta carotene level.
Yeah. A couple thoughts on that. So number one, yes, if you're a male Finnish smoker and you take a beta carotene supplement, you're going to increase your risk of lung cancer. Yeah, that would like stirred up the supplement industry.
That was quite a study.
It kind of makes the point, though, like you said, Dr. Pierce, that from whole foods, you get all that stuff balanced. Nature seems to know what it's doing more than the supplement companies taking things out of context. And really what we think are the best sources of beta carotene are the stuff that Dr. Pierce grows in his yard and shows on his YouTube channel, all those leafy greens, even though they're green and they're not orange, just like leaves changing colors in the fall, when the chlorophyll goes away, those other colors are there. Green just kind of dominates. And that's why I'm able to maintain upper end of the reference range beta carotene levels, even with no carrots or nothing orange in my diet, because the greens contain the orange. So that's the awesome stuff. And if you really want to get the most, I've noticed early on, if you ever meet somebody who drinks a lot of carrot juice regularly, I mean, their hands are so orange, their face is orange, the bottom of their feet's all orange. They're not cooking it, but they're obviously getting a lot of beta carotene, and it's stored in the fat under their skin.
Yeah. Well, I opened it up for questions, and we've got quite a few that have come in. So let's go through these. I know we've got about 15 more minutes, so let's see how many of these we can get through. This is kind of a simple question. Someone had ordered the Raw Food Nutrition Handbook. What other books would you recommend?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, what are the best books out there? It depends. There aren't that many really great raw food books out there, to tell you the truth. It depends on people's perspective. So Dr. Gabriel Cousens has been a big fan of a raw food diet for many, many years. He speaks about nutrition. He also speaks about raw food from a spiritual perspective. So if that interests any of you, Gabriel Cousens, Cousens. He has some books, Spiritual Nutrition and the Rainbow Diet, another one classic called Conscious Eating, that are really good books. If you really like a higher fruit, lower fat approach, the book called 80-10-10 by Doug Graham is a staple within certain camps of the raw food community. We have a few cautions there. There's some things that we don't think quite add up in our opinion. But nevertheless, it's a good, solid foundation for understanding a lot of things. What else? And just, we'll say this, even though it's not a raw food book, the China Study and the Pleasure Trap are probably the two top books we can think of in the plant-based community in general. You can't beat the authority of the China Study, and the Pleasure Trap helps us understand why, when we know we should eat healthy and more fruits and vegetables, why it's actually so hard to do. And at least you don't beat yourself up, and you can go about things gradually. If you have the understanding from those two things, and then you just keep heading toward more fruits and vegetables, you're going to be on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I have to agree with those two books that you mentioned. Yep.
And then from a plant-based perspective, I really like the work of Dr. Neil Barnard. He has a lot of really excellent books.
Yeah, like the Cheese Trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Casomorphins, yeah.
And Joel Furman has a lot of really good stuff too. But
yeah, definitely.
It's kind of hard in the raw food community because there's not a lot of science-based information. So
that's kind of where we come in.
Yeah, I always steer people more towards the plant-based doctors if they're looking for something scientifically based.
Yeah, that's evidence-based. Yep. Okay, this next question is, how do you increase ferritin levels with raw foods? Any resources other than taking an iron supplement?
All right, so that's a really good question. And you guys probably make this disclaimer all the time. We don't know who this is, what their history is, what their lab works look, so this is super general education. This is not specific advice. Ferritin's very interesting. So ferritin is the storage form of iron that can be measured in the body. And what I've seen, I'm going to start up this again, like in a few weeks. We're getting our disclaimer and everything ready. But over the course of the 10 years or so, I worked with a few hundred people eating plant-based and raw food diets, and, measured their complete blood counts and, all the various things. And so it's not uncommon for ferritin levels in people's bodies who are on plant-based diets, for their iron and the other measurements that show you the iron status in the body, like hemoglobin, hematocrit, and the size of your red blood cells, for those to all be solid. But for ferritin, the storage form of iron, to be near the lower end of the reference range. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. What's happening there is that there's two basic forms of iron, heme iron and non-heme iron. And heme iron, found in hemoglobin, like from animals, is what's called non-selectively absorbed. Your body will absorb that whether you need it or not. kind of like the analogy Karin was talking about with beta carotene converting to vitamin A and our body having a built-in regulation mechanism. It works this way with ALA to DHA in the omega-3 world, and it's an analogous analogy, or it's analogous here in the iron world as well. Non-heme iron found in plant foods and leafy greens, generally speaking, especially those low in oxalate, are going to be the best sources of that. We absorb iron when we need it, and we don't absorb as much when we don't need it. So in my opinion, because most people's iron sources are from heme iron that gets absorbed whether we need it or not, that makes the ferritin reference ranges not necessarily all the experts got together and said what's ideal. It's the norm. It's just the bell curve of your average person. So it's a bit higher than it really needs to be. So if your ferritin, you don't want to be below the reference range for ferritin, but if you're at least in the reference range, even if you're near the low end of the spectrum, and all the things on your complete blood count look good, red blood cell size is normal, hemoglobin and hematocrit are normal. Generally speaking, when I see that with a patient, I'm not concerned.
Thank you.
And it's
Appreciate
okay.
that. Okay.
And just a quick thing about how to potentially raise it. If you're having trouble with raw greens, then you could always, like Dr. Rick said, go for the lower oxalate greens. And if you're still having trouble with it, you could juice them, because juicing will help to separate the fiber, make the iron a little bit more absorbable. That's something that could potentially work. It worked for me once.
Okay. And do you ever talk to people about, making sure that you have vitamin C as well to help with the absorption?
Yeah.
The great news about
That
leafy
goes with it.
greens is that are
The
high
leafy
in
greens.
iron is they're packed with vitamin C at the same time. So again, another example of nature packaging things up very intelligently.
Yeah, great. Okay, the next question. What raw foods that have, I'm assuming it means, what raw foods have the most nutrient-dense properties? Or do you just eat a lot of raw foods and hope
Vegetables.
for the best?
So one of the big mistakes raw vegans make, and most people make, is there's not enough vegetables. I've done a few different nutrient analyses where I look at a starch-based diet with some fruits and vegetables versus a fruit and vegetable-based diet with some starches. And we see some dramatic increases in nutrient levels, like 20 times more beta carotene, triple the vitamin C, double or so the folate, for the same percentage of calories from fat, more omega-3 fats. So when you add, whether they're cooked or raw, eat a lot of vegetables in your diet. And what I mean by a lot is not token amounts. Like, for example, this is like at the Olympic level of eating raw food. I eat about 4 pounds of vegetables a day. It's about a head of lettuce, which is a pound. It's about a pound or so of raw cauliflower, a lot of zucchini and tomato and a big salad. We'd encourage, you don't have to go that extreme. We'd encourage everyone to eat about 2 pounds of vegetables per day, and try to make about half of that leafy greens. And you'll see, for example, if you look on Chronometer or other nutrient databases, if you're eating like just fruits and starches and there's not vegetables there are going to be some gaps in various key nutrients. When you start to add the vegetables in there, those gaps fill in beautifully, other than the basic things like B12 and vitamin D. And so vegetables are just the absolute best. Eat as many of them as you can. The only problem with them is that you're not going to get enough calories. Even if you eat as many as you can, you might get 800 calories in a day. So you need some fruit and or some starches and or small quantities of healthy fat to make sure you're going to get enough calories also. And if you put that together, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. In fact, if you go to my Instagram account, which is Dr. Karin Dina, which is spelled DrKarinDina, the last post that I made had the size of salad that we usually eat in a day. So you can see what Dr. Rick's actually talking about there.
Perfect. That was actually going to be one of my questions earlier, is kind of what do your meals look like throughout the day? So that's great that people can go on there and see that. And you had mentioned, Dr. Rick, the B12. So someone is asking about B12 and presuming that you would need a B12 supplement on a raw vegan diet. Is that something that you guys take? Are there any other supplements that you would recommend for people who eat a raw diet?
Yeah, great question. So, as Dr. Karin says all the time, vitamin B12 is an issue for anybody on any diet. We like to quote the Framingham Offspring study that in the year 2000 found that among omnivores, what is it, 40%, 39% of them were actually low in vitamin B12. It is found in animal foods, but it's not absolutely reliably found
not reliable
in animal foods. And a lot of the reasons it's found in animal foods is because the animals are given supplements, including B12. But nevertheless, you don't find B12 in plant-based diets, and it is an important nutrient. And we recommend people test homocysteine, methylmalonic acid, B12 itself, and see what their status is. And if you need a supplement, you have not failed. It's just an issue of modern living that we all need to pay attention to, no matter what our diet is. The other major one is vitamin D. I mean, here we all are. There's sun where I could be getting vitamin D from, production from my skin a few feet away on the other side of the wall here, but I'm inside at the computer talking to these nice doctors and all of you folks not getting vitamin D. So that's the most widespread vitamin deficiency in the world, no matter what your diet is. And Dr. Karin, I'll let you talk about a few of the other things, zinc, iodine, selenium, for example, that can be challenging.
The other ones, like the ones that Rick just mentioned, are ones that we need to take on a case-by-case basis. But one of the things you can do is you can go over to an online nutrient analysis software like Chronometer and see where you are with those other nutrients. And you can figure out which plants can be good sources of those. It's one of the things that we teach in our Mastering Raw Food Nutrition class, how to optimize your raw food or plant-based diet and how to figure out how to make it work for you over the long term. So yeah, all those other things, we take them under advisement. And one thing I would like to say about vitamin B12 is that it is a perennial topic of discussion in the raw food and the plant-based community. There's controversies that come and go over the years. Over 35 years, I've seen vitamin B12 controversies come and go. Don't let the noise get in the way of you realizing your optimal health potential.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I know that we're nearing the end. It would be great if you could tell us a little bit about what is the best way for people to learn more about you and what you do, and maybe be a part of some of these courses that you offer, websites, any books, social media, anything like that. Where would you send people?
We have our website, which is rawfoodeducation.com. As far as social media goes, on Facebook, we are Science of Raw Food Nutrition. On Instagram, I am Dr. Karin Dina, so DrKarinDina. And on YouTube, if you just look for our names, Rick Dina, Karin Dina, you'll see our YouTube channels there. I've got two, and Rick has one. And is there anything else?
Yeah, a couple things in the chat. Someone mentioned Dr. Brooke Goldner's book. Even if you don't have lupus, we don't think people need quite as much fat as she recommends, and we're not quite as down on fruit. But nevertheless, there's a significant overlap between what she teaches and what we teach. We've had a number of people who have taken her program in our Mastering Raw Food Nutrition class, so we get to hear the approach, and people get excellent results. So I would that sounds reasonable to put her book on the list of good raw food books. But yeah, anyway, those are the places to keep in touch with us.
Yes, and we have a comprehensive 12-month curriculum called Mastering Raw Food Nutrition that we've been teaching in person and online for over 20 years. The precursor in person, which was the Science of Raw Food Nutrition, and then Mastering online for the last 10 years. And we keep on teaching it over and over again. every year because people love it and they keep asking us for more and more. And I would like to acknowledge all of these questions that you all posted here. And if we didn't get to all of them, I apologize. And if you would like to get those answered in person, you can always sign up for our website email address. Put your email address into our website, rawfoodeducation.com, and then come on one of our live webinars and you can ask questions in person, get those answered there.
Several times a year, we have live informative webinars and we pick a topic and teach the science about it and people ask questions. So absolutely.
Yeah.
That is available. And we also say just recently, within the last year, not everyone is ready to take a year-long class. It's a few $1,000s. We recommend they spend about 200 hours over the course of a year to get the value out of our Mastering Raw Food Nutrition course. Because of that, we recently started a very low-cost community that people can join, and they get a live Q&A session once a month, just kind of like this, people asking Q&A. They also get a live recipe demo once a month. We have an incredibly comprehensive course in there called Creating Nutrient Replete Meals. Goes through the research with all the important nutrients and then makes food and recipes that cover the nutrient bases with that from a fruit and vegetable perspective. And there's some other great resources in there. You can access our past summits and see interviews with, Chef AJ and Dr. Goldhammer and Dr. Barnard and Greger and all sorts of other authorities. So if you go to rawfoodeducation.com, you'll see a tab for that community as well, which is another great way to get educated and keep in touch with us.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Obviously, this was a very popular talk and people were very excited to ask questions. Obviously, we couldn't get through them all, but like they mentioned, if you go to the rawfoodeducation.com, you can get on their email list and request to have those questions answered at one of their upcoming Q&As. So I just want to thank the both of you for spending your time with us today and really, fantastic information today. So thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you
It's
for
an
having us.
honor, really honor to be here. And it's so fun connecting with all of you who ask questions and check things out here as well.
Okay. And for everybody watching, don't forget that you can visit us at lifestyletelemedicine.com. We do have doctors that cover all 50 states, DC, and international. So if you're looking for a lifestyle medicine doctor who lives the lifestyle that we promote, we would love to talk with you. We would love to work with you. So you can go to our website. You can even just call us. So if you want to talk to Susan, who's our patient care coordinator, she would love to talk with you a little bit more about what we offer and get you an appointment with one of our doctors. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for watching today, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.